On the night of the UFC in Paris, Tom Aspinall was in town for a conference. A well-known journalist was also there, attending his first ever UFC event to watch his colleague Ante De Liha fight. After De Liha finished Markin Tibura, just like Tom did 2 years prior, the heavyweight was incredibly emotional. The next month, Tom made a statement that showed just how close he was to John Jones.
So my friend and training partner has just got to the UFC. He just got his first
I saw.
win, and now he's in the top 10, which is like, to get your first win, like, you just beat a guy in the top 10.
Oh, sick. Oh, nice.
So like, he's potentially like 2 or 3 wins away from like a title shot. If I'd never won a title, I'd never touched gold before, we would have to fight, because that's my dream.
Yeah.
But now I've done it, I would be like, I'll vacate it and he can have his time.
Fair. Really?
But this statement was one of the main reasons his first week as the official champion was ruined. In his first title defense, Dana White was not happy at all with what Tom said. And as you know, after the main event ended, Dana accused him of not wanting to continue the fight.
I hate that,
Meanwhile, another fight week kicked off on the other side of the world in Las Vegas. A fighter who had broken into the top 10 was preparing for his second UFC bout. In an attempt to defend his friend Tom, who was still facing harsh criticism from the MMA community, he ended up making things much worse for the poor guy who still hasn't regained perfect vision in his eye.
Ja mislim da to nije nesreća. Ja sam 33 meča, nisam nikoga ubao u oči. Tako da mislim da to treba strogo kažnjavati.
Over the past few months, Dana White has been trying to fix the heavyweight division and the UFC in general. It started after the legendary ADCC champion Buchecha lost his first UFC fight against Martin Buday. The UFC immediately released Buday, even though he was the winner, simply because the fight wasn't entertaining enough. Then, during week 8 of the Contender Series, Dana refused to give Rashid Vagabov a UFC contract.
That UFC will not extend the contract with us. So, it was pretty rough.
Then, at a UFC fight night, despite Hamdi Abdelwahab's fight being a perfect example of the heavyweight division's current problems, I thought he had escaped being cut when he called out a big name after his win. But Dana, Hunter Campbell, and Sean Shelby didn't care. The very next day, Hamdi was released, followed by the loser of that same fight. In another step to correct the heavyweight division, Dana sent his matchmaker, Mick Maynard, to a dirty boxing event in Nashville. He was there to scout Olympic wrestling champion Gable Steveson, who won his second fight by knockout in just a few seconds. The leap that a man weighing over 250 pounds made in front of you is enough to show you the level of athlete he is. With the harsh criticism of Tom Aspinall continuing not just from fans but from other fighters like Walter Harris and Alex Pereira, the haters came out in full force. One of the ambassadors for that dirty boxing event showed up with his right eye covered, mocking Tom's injury. John Jones was also at the event not just as an ambassador but to support Gable Steveson, who considers Jones his mentor. Imagine that, a man convicted of crimes mentoring a young man who is also facing accusations, but that's a story for another time. To make matters worse, the man who arguably ruined the heavyweight division completed the public humiliation by begging Dana White for a fight.
Dana, bro, please, I'm training, I feel great, I'm healthy, and I'd be so honored to represent our country and do what I do best.
The very next day, as the UFC crew arrived in Las Vegas for one of the worst fight cards in recent memory, Dana was in Saudi Arabia at a power slap event, seemingly ignoring the fans' anger over the bad card they were forced to watch at the Apex.
Why is tomorrow and next week's UFC so bad? Well, let me ask you a question. How's it bad when it hasn't even happened yet? Shut the f*** up. Watch it tomorrow, and if it's bad, tell me it's bad.
It's sad to see a combat sport being promoted by a man who seems to have no mercy. That night during Halloween festivities, Tom Aspinall appeared for the first time since the incident. His costume and the costumes of many fans were inspired by what had happened to him just a week earlier. The following day began with news of a betting scandal.
We're going to talk about a bunch of different scenarios, and I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I know it's going to be discussed next week.
Amid growing concerns about corruption in sports like the NBA betting issues and the referee scandal in Turkey, the third fight on the main card featured one of the clearest examples of a fixed fight in combat sports history. The betting odds for Yazbek Dulatov, a massive favorite, suddenly dropped by almost 100 points in the hours before the fight, confusing everyone. When the fight started, we saw one of the fakest fights ever. He started with a ridiculous wrestling attempt, turning his back to his opponent. He gave up in the first round, and I'm sure sure he will deeply regret his actions as the FBI will likely be investigating him. The UFC released him the next day. Federal organizations are now investigating over 100 UFC fights from this year due to unusual betting patterns. Then, after the fraudster Themba Gorimbo lost, Tom's Croatian friend Ante Delija stepped into the cage to face Waldo Cortez Acosta exactly 1 week after Tom's eye injury. The fight seemed like it was going to be a boring one, with both fighters pressed against the cage for 3 minutes, but in the last minute and a half of the first round, Ante started throwing heavy punches. It looked like he hurt Waldo and might be able to finish the fight, but as Ante and his team celebrated, it turned out the man who claimed he had never poked anyone in the eye in his 33 fights had done it for the first time. Considering how badly poor Curtis was suffering, we thought the fight would be ruled a no contest, but the head referee entered the cage and started a 5-minute countdown for him to recover. The damage to his eye did not look good, but we held on to hope. He didn't say Tom's 3 words, "I can't see." During a time when his friend was being harshly criticized for not continuing, Waldo made a surprising move. He expressed his desire to return to the fight, and just a few seconds later the fight was back on. With a scenario straight out of a drama, Waldo came back screaming in pain. And the madness on social media exploded, only making things worse for poor Tom Aspinall. Don't let this dramatic scenario fool you. Most fighters who return after a strike like that either get finished or lose the fight in the end. To make things even worse, on his way out, Jon Jones changed his profile picture on Instagram, seemingly mocking the situation again. What we learned from this is that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who bring you the most misfortune. And as the dust settles on this latest chapter of heavyweight chaos, a new, almost unbelievable possibility begins to emerge from the shadows. A possibility whispered by fans online, then echoed by pundits. The question on everyone's mind is no longer if Jon Jones will fight again, but who. And now, a new, more tantalizing question has been added. What are the real chances of Jon Jones fighting Alex Pereira, especially if Poatan himself walks into Dana White's office and demands it? And could such a fight truly happen at the most audacious venue imaginable, the White House? To answer that, we have to unravel a complex web of ego, money, legacy, and pure, unadulterated chaos, which has become the trademark of the UFC's heavyweight division. Let's start with the challenger. Alex Pereira is not just a champion, he is a promoter's dream. He is a modern-day gladiator, a man of few words who lets his devastating power do all the talking. In an era where fighters often prioritize social media antics and trash talk, Pereira's quiet, menacing demeanor is a throwback, a breath of fresh, albeit terrifying air. He saved the UFC 295 card on short notice, stepping up to win the light heavyweight title. He then headlined UFC 300. For Pereira, this isn't just about a third belt. It's about mythology. It's about slaying the final dragon. He has conquered every challenge put before him, and Jones represents the pinnacle of MMA achievement. A victory over Jones at heavyweight would elevate him from a UFC legend to a combat sports immortal, a feat that would likely never be replicated. The financial incentive is of course enormous, but for a warrior like Pereira, the call of history, the chance to achieve the impossible, is the ultimate prize. Now let's turn to the king. Jon Jones sits on a throne he built over a decade of unparalleled dominance, but it's a throne that has grown cold with inactivity. His move to heavyweight was meant to be the final chapter in his goat-capping run, culminating in a victory over Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight champion in UFC history. But a pectoral injury has put all of that on hold. In the meantime, the division has moved on. Tom Aspinall, a young, dynamic, and incredibly dangerous challenger, has emerged as the interim champion. A unification bout with Aspinall is the logical, sportingly correct next step. But Jon Jones has never been a man who follows the logical path. He has shown almost complete disdain for the idea of fighting Aspinall, viewing him as a relative newcomer not worthy of sharing the octagon. For Jones, his career is now about two things: money and legacy. The Aspinall fight, while dangerous, may not offer the same level of reward in his eyes. It's a high-risk, lower-reward fight compared to the alternatives. A fight against Stipe is a legacy fight against a fellow legend. A fight against Francis Ngannou, had he stayed, would have been a colossal payday. The fight against Pereira, it's both. It's a super fight of epic proportions that would generate astronomical pay-per-view numbers. It's a new kind of challenge, a puzzle he has never seen before. Defeating a killer like Pereira, a man who has held titles in divisions below him, would be a unique addition to his legacy. It would also be a way to sidestep the legitimate and very dangerous threat of Tom Aspinall, all while making more money and generating more hype. For a man as calculating as Jones, the appeal is obvious. obvious. So if both fighters are potentially willing, what about the promoter? Dana White's primary motivation is, and always has been, the bottom line. He is a fight promoter, and his job is to sell the biggest fights possible. Jones versus Aspinall is a great fight for the purists. Jones versus Pereira is a global event that transcends the sport. It would capture the imagination of the casual fan in a way that few fights can. Think McGregor versus Mayweather, but inside the octagon. The narrative is perfect. The dominant, long-reigning king versus the silent, terrifying challenger from a lighter kingdom coming to conquer new lands. Dana knows this. He also knows that his relationship with Jones has been notoriously volatile, while his relationship with Pereira is rock solid. If he can make this fight happen, he bypasses the Aspinall problem, placates his heavyweight superstar, rewards his new Brazilian cash cow, and makes a fortune in the process. From a business perspective, it is a no-brainer. This brings us to the most outlandish part of the equation, the White House. This idea has been floated by Dana White, tied to his friendship with former President Donald Trump. While the logistical and security nightmares make it a near impossibility, it exists as a symbol of Dana's ultimate ambition. It's about spectacle. And if any fight were to justify such a preposterous venue, it would be Jones versus Pereira. Imagine the scenes, the octagon set up on the South Lawn, the most powerful people in the world in attendance. It's the kind of ego-driven, reality-bending event that both Dana White and Donald Trump would relish. While it remains a fantasy, its existence in the conversation shows just how big this potential fight is perceived to be. So let's break it down into percentages. What are the actual odds of this happening? The chance of Pereira formally requesting the fight from Dana is extremely high, let's say 90%. He has nothing to lose and everything to gain. He has already hinted at it, and as he runs out of challenges at 205 pounds, the call of heavyweight will become louder. The chance of Dana White wanting to make the fight is even higher, perhaps 95%. It's the biggest money fight he can make in the heavyweight division, and it solves several of his current matchmaking headaches. The chance of Jon Jones accepting the fight is the biggest variable. It depends entirely on his recovery and his mindset. He might see it as the perfect final fight, a massive payday against a smaller man avoiding the dangerous Aspinall. Or he might see it as an unnecessary risk that could tarnish his legacy if he loses. Let's place his willingness at a tentative 60%. He's more likely than not to be tempted by the sheer scale of the event. Now, the logistics. Jones's injury is significant. A return timeline is still unclear. Pereira would need time to bulk up to heavyweight properly. The fight couldn't happen before late 2025 at the earliest. This logistical hurdle drops the overall probability. Let's put the chance of the fight actually being signed and happening in the next 18 to 24 months at around 40%. It's less than a coin flip, but it is far from impossible. And the White House venue? That's a 1% chance. It's a marketing pipe dream, a fun what-if scenario to generate buzz. The more likely venue would be Madison Square Garden in New York or T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. So, in conclusion, while the image of Jones and Pereira facing off on the White House lawn is likely to remain a fantasy, the fight itself is a very real possibility. It is a convergence of interest for the two fighters and most importantly for the promoter. It represents the modern UFC, a world where legacy, divisional structure, and sporting merit often take a backseat to the sheer spectacle and financial allure of the super fight. For Tom Aspinall, the deserving interim champion, it would be the ultimate slap in the face, a final bitter lesson that in this game, being the best is not always enough. You also have to be the biggest draw. And right now, there is no bigger potential draw than the mythic clash between the GOAT and the stone hand of God.